Today, we're pulling back the lid on 7 Aussie jam brands you need to think twice about before you spread them on toast, put them in the kids' lunch boxes, or swirl them through yogurt. We're talking about verified recalls, customer disappointment, shocking ingredient lists, and the kind of ultra-processed spreads that call themselves jam but barely qualify as food. And here's what makes this investigation different. We're not making wild claims or accusations. We're looking at what the labels say, what independent taste testers found, what customers experienced, and what food authorities have actually reported. Stay with this until the end, because after we expose the worst offenders, we'll reveal the Australian jams that independent reviewers say are actually worth your money. For years, Australians have been told that jam is harmless. A little on your morning toast, a dollop on a scone, part of a balanced breakfast. No big deal. But when nutrition experts and health authorities talk about added sugars in our diet, intensely sweet, sticky spreads like jam are exactly the kind of product they're worried about. Australia's own nutrition labeling reviews specifically highlight jam as a high added sugar category, recommending that people get most of their fruit as whole fruit, not as concentrated, low-fiber, high-sugar products that cling to your teeth and quietly push up your daily sugar load. The problem isn't that jam exists. It's what's happened to jam in the age of ultra-processed food. Instead of fruit slowly cooked down with a bit of sugar, many supermarket jars are bulked out with cheap sweeteners, shockingly low fruit content, generic mixed fruit from unknown origins, imported concentrates, and additives that keep the texture looking perfect for months on end. And because Australia's food recall data shows that processed foods are a major category for problems like foreign matter contamination, microbial issues, and labeling errors, even something as simple as jam can end up recalled if brands get sloppy with their manufacturing standards. And here's something most people don't realize. In 2023 alone, Australian food recalls included products for metal contamination, glass fragments, and foreign objects in processed foods, including preserves. When independent reviewers at Choice tested strawberry jams across major supermarket brands, they found massive variations in quality, fruit content, and taste. Some jams scored as low as 41% in blind taste tests, with reviewers saying they barely tasted like fruit at all. Others were found to contain as little as 30 to 40% actual strawberries, meaning the majority of what you're buying is sugar, water, and gelling agents. So let's go through the jars that raise the biggest questions, the ones that disappointed customers the most, and what you need to look for on the label before you bring them home. Number 1. Coles Strawberry Jam. The ultra-cheap staple sitting on the bottom shelf of every Coles across Australia. It's priced to move, often under $3 for a 450-gram jar, and that rock-bottom price makes it an easy grab for families watching their budget. It's the kind of product people throw into the trolley without thinking because it's cheap, it's familiar, and it's always been there. But when independent consumer group Choice actually tested this product in a blind taste comparison, the results were brutal. Coles Strawberry Jam scored just 62% overall, placing it in the bottom half of all jams tested. And when you look at what's inside, it's not hard to see why. This jam contains just 40% strawberries. That means the majority of what you're buying isn't fruit at all. It's sugar, water, gelling agents, and whatever else is needed to bulk out the jar and make it spreadable. So why is this a problem? Because these are exactly the kinds of foods driving added sugar intake in Australia. Cheap, everyday products that don't look like lollies, don't get marketed as treats, but behave like them in your body. The ingredient list is straightforward enough. Strawberries, sugar, gelling agent, food acid. But the ratio is what matters. When sugar outweighs fruit, You're not buying a fruit preserve anymore. You're buying sweetened gel with a hint of strawberry. And the taste testers noticed. While they didn't pan it completely, they described it as lacking the depth and richness you'd expect from a quality jam. It's sweet, yes, but that one-note sweetness doesn't come from ripe Australian strawberries. It comes from refined sugar doing most of the heavy lifting. The marketing leans on phrases like family favorite, great value, everyday essential. But what that really means is sweet enough that no one complains, and cheap enough that no one asks questions. The label doesn't shout about how little fruit is inside or where those strawberries actually came from. And if you've ever noticed that this kind of jam tastes flat, almost syrupy rather than fruity, that's your taste buds picking up exactly what the ingredient list is telling you. And if you think that's disappointing, wait until you see what happens when brands start hiding where the fruit even comes from. Number 2. Woolworths Essentials Strawberry Jam. The other major supermarket budget option, often sitting right next to Kohl's on the shelf. It's marketed as everyday essentials, the kind of product you buy without thinking because it's cheap. It's there, and it seems harmless enough. But when Choice dug into what's really inside, the story became far more interesting and a little uncomfortable. Woolworths Essentials. Strawberry jam scored 74% in independent taste testing, which actually placed it higher than more expensive brands. Testers described it as having a dark strawberry color, a pleasant, subtle, sweet strawberry fragrance, and a good balance of sweet and acid with nice strawberry chunks. On paper, that sounds great, until you read the fine print. This jam contains 40% strawberries, which means most of the jar is still sugar and water. But here's the kicker that caught a lot of shoppers off guard. It's made in Belgium. That's right. Despite sitting in the Australian section of an Australian supermarket, with Woolworths branding on the front, this product was manufactured in Europe and shipped halfway across the world to sit on your local shelf. For a jar of strawberry jam, that raises some uncomfortable questions. Why couldn't this be sourced locally? Why ship a heavy glass jar of sugar and fruit across the planet when Australia grows plenty of strawberries? And what does that say about freshness, carbon footprint, and the priorities of major supermarket chains? Now, to be clear, being made overseas doesn't automatically make a product unsafe or low quality, but it does raise questions about transparency, because the front of the label doesn't advertise that detail. Most shoppers would assume a Woolworths Essentials product sold in Australia was made in Australia, or at least sourced regionally. Instead, it's a European import sold under an Australian brand name. And when you combine that with the fact that it's one of the cheapest jams in the entire test, priced at just 28 cents per 100 grams, you have to wonder what other corners were cut to hit that price point. Number 3. IXL Strawberry Jam, 50% less sugar. The jam that promises to give you all the flavor with half the guilt. It's aimed squarely at people trying to cut back on sugar without giving up their morning toast ritual. The packaging highlights the reduced sugar content with bold lettering, and at first glance, it looks like a responsible choice. A way to have your jam and eat it too. But when Choice taste testers actually tried it in a blind comparison, the results were among the worst in the entire test. IXL 50% less sugar scored just 41% overall. That's not a typo. 41%. It was one of the lowest-rated jams in the entire lineup, and reviewers didn't hold back. They noted that the reduction in sugar didn't do the flavor any favors. The jam contains around 30% sugar, compared to the usual 50 to 60% in standard jams, but instead of tasting like fresh, concentrated fruit, it tasted like something was missing. Because something was. Sugar isn't just sweetness in jam. It's also part of the texture, the body, the mouthfeel, and the balance that makes jam taste like jam and not like fruit-flavored paste. To make up for the lower sugar, manufacturers often add thickeners, alternative gelling agents, or other ingredients to try and save the texture. But the end result can feel thin, flat, or strangely artificial. And that's exactly what the taste testers picked up on. They described it as lacking the richness and depth you'd expect from strawberry jam. So here's the uncomfortable question. Is it really a healthier choice if you don't enjoy eating it? If you end up using more of it to get the same satisfaction? Or if you eventually give up and go back to the full sugar version because this one just doesn't hit the spot? The branding leans heavily into wellness and responsibility. Phrases like 50% less sugar, better choice, lighter option. But what that really means is we remove the sugar and replace the experience with something that doesn't quite work. IXL is a trusted Australian brand name that's been around for generations. But this product shows that even heritage brands can miss the mark badly when they try to engineer health into a product that was never meant to be a health food in the first place. Number 4, Cottee's Strawberry Jam, a name that's been in Australian kitchens for over a century. The kind of brand your parents bought, your grandparents bought, and now you're buying without questioning it because it's always been there. That red and white label is as Australian as Vegemite. But nostalgia doesn't change what's on the ingredient list, and Cottee's is a perfect example of how heritage branding can mask a product that's basically unchanged since the 1970s. The label lists sugar first, then strawberries at around 40%, followed by gelling agent and food acid. That's it. On one hand, it's simple. On the other hand, it's more sugar than fruit. And that ratio hasn't changed even as Australians have become far more aware of how much added sugar they're consuming and what it's doing to public health. According to Australia's own nutrition reviews, products like jam are called out specifically as high-added sugar foods that contribute to excessive free sugar intake, especially in children. Yet Cottee's formula remains essentially the same as it was decades ago. In the choice taste test, Cottee's scored 67%. Not the worst, but certainly not the best. Testers described it as having a reasonable strawberry flavor, but nothing that stood out as exceptional. It was middle of the road in every sense. And perhaps that's the point. Cottee's isn't trying to be the best jam on the shelf. It's relying on brand recognition and decades of customer loyalty to keep moving units. The packaging still leans heavily into that warm, nostalgic Aussie vibe. The kind of branding that suggests something made with care, something wholesome, something you can trust because your family's always trusted it. But what it really means is we've been making this the same way for decades, and we're not changing it because people keep buying it. There's no innovation here, no response to changing nutritional guidelines, no effort to increase fruit content or reduce sugar. Just the same high sugar, low fruit formula wrapped in the comfort of a familiar name. Number 5, Woolworths Macro Organic Strawberry Jam. Now this one might surprise you because it's organic. It's got the green macro label, the premium price tag that's often double or triple the budget options, and the reassuring branding that suggests something healthier, cleaner, and more thoughtful than what you'd find in the regular jam aisle. The kind of product that makes you feel good about putting it in your trolley because you're choosing organic. You're making the responsible choice. But organic doesn't automatically mean low sugar, and it certainly doesn't mean the nutritional profile is dramatically different from a conventional jam. This jam contains around 50 to 60% strawberries, which is genuinely better than many others on this list. But it also contains organic sugar, and while the sugar is certified organic, it's still sugar. Your body doesn't process organic cane sugar any differently than regular white sugar. The glycemic impact is the same. The effect on your teeth is the same. The contribution to your daily free sugar intake is the same. And when nutrition authorities talk about reducing added sugars, they're talking about all added sugars, organic or not. The marketing plays heavily into the organic feel-good narrative. The label suggests a product made with care, grown without synthetic pesticides, closer to nature, better for you and the planet. And to be fair, organic farming practices do matter. They reduce chemical residues in food, they're generally better for soil health and biodiversity, and for people concerned about pesticide exposure, organic is a meaningful choice. But when it comes to the nutritional profile of the jam itself, organic strawberry jam and conventional strawberry jam are remarkably similar. Both are concentrated sources of added sugar with reduced fiber compared to whole fruit. So if you're buying this because you think it's healthier for your kids, or better for your waistline, or some kind of superfood spread, the reality is more complicated. The label says organic, but what that really means is we used organic ingredients, not we made this low in sugar or nutrient-dense. Number 6. Cole's Raspberry Jelly. Not jam. Jelly. And that distinction matters far more than most people realize. This product sits in the jam aisle, right next to actual jams. It gets used like jam, spread on toast, stirred into yogurt, packed in school lunchboxes. But it's technically a different category because of how little fruit it contains and how heavily it leans on gelling agents, colors, sweeteners, and flavorings to create that glassy, uniform, almost artificial-looking texture. When you open a jar of Cole's raspberry jelly, the first thing you notice is how unnaturally smooth it is. No seeds, no chunks, no texture variation at all. It looks almost like something that was poured from a mold rather than cooked in a pot. The ingredient list reveals a product built around sugar, water, gelling agent, food acid, flavor, and color. The actual fruit content is minimal, often just enough to meet the legal definition of raspberry-flavored, but nowhere near what you'd find in a real fruit preserve. So why is this a problem? Because when products like this are marketed to kids, which they absolutely are, branded with bright labels and placed at child eye level, it trains young taste buds to think this is what fruit is supposed to taste like. Hyper-sweet, bright red, smooth as glass. It sets a flavor baseline that real fruit, with its natural tartness, seeds, texture variation, and seasonal differences, simply can't compete with. The label might say raspberry, but what that really means is this tastes vaguely like raspberries because of added flavoring and color, not because we packed the jar with actual berries. Number 7. Discount imported jams from obscure European or Asian brands that turn up in bargain bins, discount variety stores, or mixed goods aisles with rock-bottom prices and almost no information on the back label. These jars can be genuinely tempting. They come in unusual flavors, giant jars, labels that look vaguely European with rustic fonts, and price tags that undercut even Coles and Woolworths' own brand products. But here's where things get uncomfortable. When jams are imported from overseas, especially from countries with different food safety standards and labeling requirements, traceability becomes a genuine concern. According to food standards, Australia, New Zealand, processed and packaged foods are among the most frequently recalled categories, with undeclared allergens, foreign matter contamination, and microbial issues causing serious problems. Food recall monitoring reports show that imported products, particularly those with complex or unclear supply chains, are disproportionately represented in recall statistics. In March 2024 alone, multiple food products were recalled for contamination with foreign objects, including glass, plastic, wood, and metal fragments. When a bargain jam offers almost no detail about where the fruit was grown, where the product was manufactured, or who the actual producer is. Consumers are left with very limited information if something does go wrong. The branding suggests authentic traditional European heritage. But what that really means is made somewhere overseas under standards you know very little about, then shipped in bulk and sold purely on price. Now let's talk about the Australian jams that independent testers and customer reviewers say are actually worth your time and pantry space. According to Choice's independent taste test, the top-rated product was Beerenberg Australian Strawberry Jam, which scored an impressive 84% overall. Testers praised it for having a good depth of strawberry flavor, a nice balance of sweetness and acidity, and visible chunks of real fruit. This jam contains around 50% strawberries, significantly higher than budget supermarket options, and it's made in Australia from predominantly Australian ingredients. The company is transparent about its sourcing. Beerenberg isn't perfect. It still contains sugar, but it's closer to the original idea of jam as a fruit preserve rather than a sweetened gel. People consistently describe it as tasting like actual strawberries, not generic berry syrup. Another standout option is Saint-Dalfour. This French brand uses concentrated fruit juice instead of refined sugar. The result is a product with 70% or more fruit content and a richer, more complex flavor profile. It's pricier, but you're paying for fruit and traditional methods rather than fillers and industrial gelling agents. For those who want to go fully local, the best option is often farmers' markets or independent grocers. Look for small-batch artisan jams listing exact farms where fruit was grown. These might only have 3 or 4 ingredients: strawberries, sugar, lemon juice. No preservatives, no artificial colors. And if you really want control, making jam at home is simpler than most people think. Australian strawberries when in season, sugar, lemon juice, 20 minutes on the stove. You'll end up with something that tastes completely different from anything in a supermarket jar. Australian food culture has drifted a long way. What used to be seasonal preserving has turned into stretching cheap imports and additives into something only looking like tradition. But the power to change doesn't sit with big brands. It sits with what you pick or leave on the shelf. Next time, flip the jar. Check fruit percentage, sugar content, origin. Ask yourself, does this look like food my great-grandparents would recognize? If you want more videos exposing what's on Australian shelves, hit like, subscribe, and share. Drop a comment. Which brand shocked you most? The one made in Belgium? The reduced sugar scoring 41%? What jam do you trust? Let's start a conversation. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay informed, and protect your plate.